What the hell is up, everybody? Louie back here again for another fun night of fights. UFC London, the third fight night in London in recent memory. The main event at heavyweight, Tom Aspinall taking on Marcin Tybura. Tom Aspinall ranked number 5, Tybura number 10. Aspinall, of course, coming off of that devastating leg injury a year ago to the date. So it's a big chance for him. It's not a title shot, not a title eliminator. But if he can beat Marcin Tybura, he's back on his way. He'll definitely get a big fight next. Possibly him and Sergey Pavlovich. If Tom Aspinall can finish Marcin Tybura, big things are about to come. You got Molly McCann in the co-main event. UFC trying to get her to have another exciting fight with Julia Stoliarenko. Got embarrassed by Aaron Blanchfield, so hopefully she can get some momentum back. And then the one I'm really excited about at featherweight, 145 pounds, Nathaniel Wood taking on Andre Fili. Nathaniel Wood 2-0 since moving up to 145. Andre Fili, a good solid test for him. If he can get past him, maybe he works his way into the rankings. And if Andre Fili can get past Nathaniel Wood, maybe he works his way up. So it's a good fight. Both guys benefit from a win here. And then you got Paul Craig moving down to middleweight, taking on Andre Muniz. Muniz trying to get one back after the Brendan Allen loss. Pretty interesting. And you got a whole lot of fights, 15 fights. Let's get right into it. First fight of the night at 125 pounds. Men's flyweight, Jared FILHO taking on Daniel BAREZ. FILHO took on Muhammad Mokaev his last fight, his UFC debut. Very impressive performance. In the first round, he lands some leg kicks, but then he pulls guillotine. He gives up his back, then gives up full guard. Can't really do much there. But then in the second round, he just kind of backs out of the overhands whenever Mokaev throws. Then he throws a left hook, followed up with a leg kick. Looking really good, moving pretty well. But then he gets taken down with the low single, tries to go for the guillotine. It does not work. Then in the third round, he gives up his double, gives up his back, and gives up the figure four. But he's able to hip heist, and he's able to get out. But then he gets doubled yet again. And he gives up his back again. Then he's able to break free, break the lock, get off the fence. Then he's able to roll for the leg. And then he's able to get a knee bar and hyperextends the knee. Don't know how Muhammad Mokaev did not tap. Anybody else probably would have tapped. That's demoralizing. I get it. He should have tapped. But then he gives up his back and gets choked out with the rear naked choke with like 30 seconds left to go. So, tough one, but he almost won the fight. Muhammad Mokaev, big prospect. Not a bad performance. And then Daniel BAREZ, he took on Solanas Carvalho in UWC, so he'll be making his UFC debut. In the first round, he lands some hard leg kicks, presses forward with some jabs, and he drops some with a left to the body, and then an overhand right to the head. And then he drops some with some overhands, follows it up with a flurry, and then just gets a TKO. So, smells blood in the water and gets it done. You always like seeing that. And then before that, he took on Francisco Benitez. In the first round, he presses forward with some jabs and some leg kicks against the fence, and then he drops him with the lead left hook. Jumps right onto the arm triangle from guard and gets a submission. So he's got submissions, got a killer instinct. I like seeing that. Don't know how he looks later on in the fight, but Jafel Filho, he doesn't go very long either typically. So pretty even fight. Daniel BAREZ minus 105. Jafel Filho is minus 115. I'm gonna go with Daniel BAREZ. I just don't think, I think Filho, talented fighter, but if he doesn't get that big submission, who knows? I think Daniel BAREZ has a lot of power. I think he'll press the action a lot more, and it's an even line. So I'm going to go with him. Why not? Second fight of the night at 115 pounds, UFC newcomer Shauna Bannon taking on Bruno Brazil. Bannon took on Mina Grusander and Invicta. In the first round, she slips throwing a kick. She gives up half guard, unfortunately, but then she's able to get the overhooks, able to stay right back up. She tries to go for the head and arm throw. But then she gets up and then she's able to get the body lock. Then she lands some body kicks, followed up with some head kicks whenever she gets pressed. And then in the clinch situation, she's able to complete the wizard kick and gets on top for the end of the round. Then in the second round, she gets body locked all the way to the fence, but she's able to keep that whizzer yet again. Then she's able to get to like sort of a standing crucifix position, and then she's able to pancake her, take her over right into full mount. And then she transitions to half guard, tries to go for the arm triangle, doesn't get it, but follows up with some nice ground and pound. So she's always staying busy on the ground. I like that. Then in the third round, she gets pressed and she eats some hooks in a straight combo. But then she's able to push her down with the side kick, very powerful side kick. And then she's able to defend the knee bar and half guard, just keeps landing more ground and pound. It does some decent damage and gets a 3-round decision. Pretty good performance from her overall. Decent grappling ability, decent defense. And then Bruna Brazil took on Denise Gomez in her last fight. In the first round, she eats an overhand off of her kick, and then she gets dropped with a leg kick. Then she gets clinched with the underhook, but she's able to reverse the situation on the fence. Then she eats overhand standing at range and eats a blitz and gets taken down with a back trip off the fence. Then in the second round, she gets clinched and back tripped yet again. But then she's able to land a couple check left hooks whenever she gets pressed. Then she eats a left to the body and a right to the head. Then she gets dropped and TKO'd via ground and pound. So, yeah, tough situation there. But Bruna Brazil minus 150, Shauna Bannon plus 130. I'm going to go Shauna Bannon. It's really a no-brainer here. I have trepidation about betting people on their first fight in the UFC, but it's women's MMA, low level, and, you know, it's kind of, and she's a big star, so underdog, that kind of fits. I really thought she was going to be the favorite going into this, so Shauna Bannon. Third fight of the night at 155 pounds, Chris Duncan taking on, ASHMOUZ. Chris Duncan took on Omar Morales his last fight. In the first round, he landed some leg kicks, followed up with some overhand rights at range. His double attempt gets stuffed, and he eats some uppercuts and hooks in the pocket for his trouble in the clinch, but then he's able to drop him with a counter cross, just kind of standing from the clinch position. Then in the second round, he's able to complete the double leg off the fence, takes his back, and then he's able to hook his ankle with his leg. But then back on the feet, he eats a counter straight off of whenever he throws his hook. He loads up a little too much. Then in the third round, he eats a jab and a leg kick standing at range, but he's able to get that single, treetop it, and pushes him down. And he's able to get around his back up against the fence. Good pressure. Then he presses some, and then he was able to land some counter overhands whenever he gets pressed. But then he eats an uppercut standing at range. And then ASHMOUZ, he took on Sam Patterson his last fight. In the first round, he's able to catch the leg kick, and he's able to land an overhand left, and gets a knockout. So, sorry, overhand right, left hook knockout right away. So yeah, not too much to take away from that, but he's got power. Before that, he took on Dennis Hughes in the PFL Challenger Series. In the first round, he misses his overhands, and he gets taken down with a double off the fence, but he's able to get to his feet on the fence, uses a whizzer, and he's able to complete an inside trip, gets on top, able to postures up, brings down some heavy ground and pound, and then he goes to the front headlock, and he's able to get the over-under, complete the hip toss, and then he's able to stay around his back, standing up against the fence. Then he dips his head when he throws some overhands, but then he's able to land some straights at range, and kind of leads with his head a little bit, though. Then in the second round, he just rips the body, and then he gets the body lock inside trip takedown on the fence, then goes to the front head again. He's able to circle around the back, then get into side control and kind of ride it out. And then third round kind of goes the same, but decent ground control. He has knockout power, but he can also go the full fight. So I like that. ASHMOUZ plus 130, Chris Duncan minus 150. I'm gonna go with the Yanal here, slight underdog, and I think he's a complete fighter, and I think he's also got that knockout power. But if he doesn't get the knockout, I think his takedown defense is decent. And Chris Duncan, kind of a wild style, I would say. And maybe Yanal can catch him. I like that underdog price. I'm going to go with Yanal on this one. Fourth fight of the night at 135 pounds, women's bantamweight. Ketlen Vieira taking on Pannie Kianzad. Ketlen Vieira took on Raquel Pennington her last fight. In the first round, she presses forward, looks for some counter hooks and some jabs, but then she eats some jabs and leg kicks at range. In the second round, she eats a 1-2, throwing her jab. Then she kind of overswings an overhand. She gives up her back standing. She's able to get the underhook clinch to the fence, but then she eats some knees. Doesn't really stay busy there. And then the third round, she eats a straight, but then she's able to counter with an uppercut and a left hook, followed by a straight right. But then she's able to get the underhook clinch again. But then she eats a straight at range, and they both get into like a clinch battle. But then she eats some knees from the tie clinch and just can't really get out of there, and just takes some damage in the clinch. And then Pannie Kianzad, she took on Lena Landsberg her last fight. In the first round, she grabs for the tie clinches a lot when they get into exchanges. Then she eats a right hook standing at range, and then she gets clinched to the fence. But then she gets one hook in, standing around her back, and then she drags her down, grabs a cross wrist. Nice control. Then in the second round, she gets clinched to the fence, but she's able to reverse the position, and she lands some uppercuts in the tie clinch, and then followed up by some knees to the body. But then she gets dropped whenever she's kind of stalking her, and she walks right into a nasty elbow. Lapse of judgment. But then in the third round, she's able to block with the right hand, and then she follows it up, counters with the left hook. Then she blitzes forward, and then she'll kind of circle out. She'll go in and out, and just kind of skirt around the fence. Pannie Kianzad plus 130, Ketlen Vieira minus 150. I'm going to go with Pannie Kianzad. I know that it's like a higher rank. Like Ketlen Vieira is number 5, Pannie's like number 10 or something. But it's women's bantamweight, and VIEIRA just doesn't have enough activity. KIANZAD might be able to stay busier in the clinch situations, and I think she might be able to get done. Slight underdog. I'm going to go with Penny on this one. Fifth fight of the night at 185 pounds, MURADOV taking on BARBERENA. BARBERENA coming up from 170, so that's interesting. McCANN took on Andrew Sanchez's last fight. In the first round, he's able to stop the shot, lands a couple lead hooks and a leg kick, but then he eats some straights when he's throwing his leg kicks. But he's able to circle on the outside, throws some lunge hooks, but they're a little too short, cannot connect. Then in the second round, he eats some jabs at range, and then he lands a lunge overhand, followed up by a straight. But then he lands a lead left and some right hooks, countered off the jab, but then he lands a front kick, followed up by a right hook. But then in the third round, he lands an overhand and an uppercut at range, and then he's able to level change, digs in the body. Then he eats a jab and a cross whenever he's circling. He loads up his right hook, and then he's able to rock him with a flurry, and then gets a TKO. So hits him with one big shot. He's looking for it, and he's kind of patient. And he has pretty good third rounds historically. And then BARBERENA, he took on Robbie Lawler. His last fight at 170. I mean, he took on RDA and then Gunnar Nelson, but they're very grapple heavy. So in the first round, he lands some leg kicks at range and some jabs whenever he gets pressed, but then he gets cut off on the cage, and then he eats nasty cross. But then they kind of trade hooks with his back up against the fence. But then he's able to rip the body and land some counter elbows. And then in the second round, he gets rocked with a jab with his back toward the fence, but then he eats some hooks whenever he's walking in the pocket, but then he's able to land a step-in elbow followed by a left hook, and then he lands a hook flurry on the fence and then gets a TKO. And it was one of those situations where Robbie just kind of dropped his guard, and they had a firefight for some reason. So, but BARBERENA plus 265, MURADOV minus 345. I don't really like the price, and MURADOV isn't really a finisher, and BARBERENA historically has a decent chin, but he cannot grapple, like, whatsoever, pretty much. I mean, I know he's able to get those takedowns against Matt Brown a while ago, but those were, like, out of desperation, kind of. And, you know, this line is giving me trouble, but, I mean, the smart play is MURADOV, because why would BARBERENA go up to 185? I mean, maybe his chin will be better, but BARBERENA is just like a brawler, and McCANN is able to stay at range. I think he'll be able to pick him apart at range. So I'm going to go with MURADOV. I don't know how it happens. I don't know if he knocks BARBERENA out. But if you want to throw like $10 on BARBERENA, I don't blame you. But I'm going to go with McCANN on this one. It just makes sense. Fifth fight of the night at 265 pounds, men's heavyweight. We got a fun slot fest here. PARKIN taking on Jamal Pogues. PARKIN making his UFC debut. He took on Eduardo Neves on Dana White's Contender Series. In the first round, he eats overhand, but he's able to get the overhook clinch. But then he lands a check hook off of a blitz, and then he eats some lead hooks, kind of standing at range again. Then he's able to get the body lock, and he pulls him right on top of him. Not good IQ. Then he eats some elbows. He eats an elbow, but then he's able to take his back off of a spin whenever he throws a spinning attack, and then he's able to get around his back, get a mat return, lands some good ground and pound to set up the rear naked choke. Gets one hook in, gets a submission right up against the fence. And, yeah, heavyweights, like, if you can sink in a rear naked choke, you're probably going to get it. So, and then Jamal Pogues, he took on Josh Parisian in his last fight. I believe it was his debut. In the first round, he's able to duck the hook. He gets an outside trip takedown, but then he eats a front face kick at range. But then he's able to get a body lock trip off of the kick, catches it, gets a trip, nice takedown. And then the second round, he gets a blast double, and then he lands some jabs, and he's able to get double unders, and he's able to stuff the clinch attempts against the fence, but then he gets pressed with some jabs. Then in the third round, he lands some counter hooks off of Josh's jab, and then he's able to get the double off the kick again, and he backs up, and he starts pumping his jabs whenever Josh is stalking him, because Josh is down at this point. But then he gives up a double, and he gives up his back right at the end of the fight, but he's able to get back up at least on the fence, so didn't take too much damage, and there's like 15 seconds left. Jamal Pogues minus 165, PARKIN plus 135. I'm gonna go with Jamal Pogues. I think he's the better fighter. I think he could go 3 rounds. PARKIN, you know, might hit him with a crazy shot. I don't think so. I don't think he's gonna be able to take Jamal down. I think Jamal's gonna jab his face off. Maybe Mick takes a bad shot. We already saw him pull somebody on top of him, so minus 165, not too bad of a price. I'm gonna go with Jamal Pogues. Seventh fight of the night at 155 pounds, men's lightweight, Mark Diakhiese taking on Joel Alvarez. I think this one could either be really fun or really boring, maybe a little bit of both. Mark Diakhiese took on Michael Johnson his last fight. In the first round, his double attempt gets stuffed, but he circles on the outside, and then he lands some step-in leg kicks and some body kicks. Then he eats a 1-2 whenever he's stepping in to throw his kick. But then he falls whenever he throws the leg kicks. And then Michael Johnson gets on top of him, tries to go for a triangle, not really successful. Then in the second round, he lands a leg kick and a jab, and then kind of circles around. Then he eats a body shot and a lead hook whenever he's circling. Then he gets cut off, eats a hook against the fence. Then in the third round, he eats some straights to the body, standing at range. Then he lands right to the body, left to the head when they go in the pocket. Then he eats a hook off of a jump knee. And, you know, just tried one takedown, didn't get it. Didn't really try too much more after that. Then Joel Alvarez took on Arman Saruki in his last fight. I'm not going to count that. And then before that, he took on Thiago Moises. In the first round, he landed a jab, but then he's a counter right hook. Then he lands some stepping knees, followed up by some right crosses. Then he lands a jab and an overhand, and he lands a counter hook. But then he eats a counter hook, but then he rocks him with some elbows up against the fence. A little bit of a flurry there. Then he's able to catch the kick, lands some elbows, rips the body, and just follows up with a flurry, gets a TKO. Nasty body shot. But he did miss weight in that fight, just to point that out. But Joel Alvarez minus 195, Mark DiAkiese plus 165. And Joel Alvarez has a 0% takedown defense rating. And, you know, that doesn't tell the whole story, obviously. And, you know, Joel Alvarez has got dynamite in his hands. And is Mark DiAkiese going to even try for a takedown if he fails the first time? Joel Alvarez could possibly land a big shot, land a big knee up the middle. Who knows? But at minus 195, I don't know how I feel about that. You know, if Mark DiAkiese can implement the right game plan, maybe it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be entertaining, but he can take him down and kind of ride him out. And he doesn't even have to do that the whole fight. He just has to do it like over half the round. The only thing that concerns me is Mark DiAkiese does not do much work on the ground. So I don't know. And we saw how timid he was to shoot his last fight. But minus 195 doesn't sit well with me. I think I'm going to go with Mark DiAkiese. Decent underdog shot. The whole fight to go over 2.5, minus 105. That's conducive to Mark DiAkiese's game plan. I'm going to take those. I'm going to go with Mark DiAkiese. We'll see what happens. Co-main event of the prelims at 170 pounds, men's welterweight, Danny Hot Chocolate Roberts taking on Johnny the Paradox Parsons, or the Juggernaut, I believe. The Sluggernaut, I think. But I saw Paradox online, so. But, yeah, Johnny Parsons is making his debut. Danny Roberts took on Francisco Trinaldo his last fight. He took on Jack Della Maddalena. I'm not going to count that against him. But in the first round, he gets pressed with some jabs at range. But then he's able to land some leg kicks at range, followed up by some step-in overhands. He presses forward with some straights. And then he just kind of back out, gets outside. But then he lands some lead hooks, but then eats a counter left whenever he goes in to throw them. And then the second round, he gets rocked with a jab whenever he's loading up a hook. But then he's able to grab the clinch. Doesn't take any more damage. But then he eats some uppercuts in the clinch and eats some body hooks up against the fence, but then he drops on the guillotine, and he gives up side control because he's defending the guillotine. Decent defense. He just kind of goes down on the mat, but he gives up side control for that. But then he lands some odd hooks in the pocket exchange, but they both kind of land on each other. Then in the third round, he clinches, but then he eats some hooks on his way in. But then he lands a head kick, but then he gets rocked with the counter hook when he's walking into him. But then he lands some crosses, but then he gets clinched up again, so I can't really get going, and, you know, it's kind of all or nothing. Johnny Parsons took on Solomon Renfro, Dana White's Contender Series in 2021, so it's a little bit of a layoff. Red flag already. But then in the first round, he lands a head kick at range, but then he eats a body shot whenever he's crashing into him, and then he gets rocked with the right hook off of his head kick. Then he eats another flurry, throws a head kick a little too close. Then he gets dropped with a jab off of a step-in leg kick, but he's able to land a jump knee and a cross, but then he gets taken out of the double off of that. And then the second round, he lands a step-in right cross, counters it off the hook. Then he lands a step-in right and then a left hook. Then he lands a step-in cross, and he'll just kind of back out of range, doesn't take any more damage. Then he lands a step-in elbow, but then he gets taken out of the double, just kind of steps in too far. Then in the third round, he lands a big jump knee, like right away. Then he eats some jabs at range, but he's able to stop the double leg attempt again. But he lands an uppercut, but then he eats a cross. But he's able to follow it up with lands a 1-2 at range, and then he lands a body kick and then a head kick. So he's just kind of a slugger, gets in there, does his thing. Solomon Renfro plus 105, Danny Roberts minus 125. I'm going to go with Danny Roberts. The line is pretty close, and Danny Roberts is the better fighter. He's fought better competition. Johnny Parsons gets tired. If he doesn't land big shots, he's not going to be successful. I think Danny's going to be able to piece him up at range, and Johnny Parsons doesn't have great grappling. I think, you know, Danny might even be able to clinch him up, get a takedown or something. I think Parsons is going to get tired in the third round. I'm going to go with Danny Hot Chocolate. It's a pretty easy pick for me. Main event of the prelims at 135 pounds, men's bantamweight. Davey Grant taking on Daniel Marcos. Davey Grant took on Rafael Assunção's last fight in a wild bout. In the first round, he gets taken down off a kick, but he gives up his back, lets him put one hook in, but then he gets back up to the feet. He lands a left and a right head kick. Then he lands a right to the body, and then followed up by a left to the head. He throws those combinations in close like that. Then the second round, he gets singled off of a step-in straight, but then he's able to defend the single, gets up to the fence, gets his foot to the mat, but then he eats a cross whenever he throws his leg kick, but then he gets body locked whenever he's throwing some hooks, and then he gives up his back, but nothing really comes of it. I would say he's down 2 rounds at this point, but then in the third round, he presses forward, and then he drops him with an overhand right, and he's able to stuff the first shot, but then he gets taken out the double off the fence again. Rafael had a good reshot, but then he stalks with the cross, and he rips the body, and then he lands a left and right to the body, then to the head, and then he lands a jab and a head kick, but then he drops him with the back fist, of all things. Yeah, gotta watch out for that. But then he's able to defend the single leg, and they're kind of in an Iranian position, and Davey Grant locks up an inverse triangle and gets a submission with short time left to go. So yeah, pretty wild. Who would have thought Davey Grant gets a submission? Then Daniel Marcos took on Simon Oliveira's last fight. In the first round, he's able to defend the single leg attempts on the fence. He lands a straight right, and then he rips the body up against the fence. Then he lands some knees in the clinch and follows up with a body kick. But then he eats a back fist up against the fence. But then he's able to land a straight combination on the fence, countering off the hooks. Then in the second round, he lands some body kicks off of spinning elbow attempts. Then he lands a 1-2, followed up with a head kick, follows it up with a straight flurry, and then he's able to duck under the hooks, rips the body, and then he lands some knees to the body, gets a KO in a flurry, smells blood, goes after it. Daniel Marcos minus 140, Davey Grant plus 120. Yeah, both guys are kind of scrappy, and I would say both guys have similar styles. But the line's not too far off. Davey Grant's actually a slight underdog. And, Daniel Marcos, not nearly as much experience in the UFC. It's kind of a no-brainer. I'm going to go with Davey Grant. Davey Grant can go 3 rounds. He can take a beating and turn it on in the later rounds. Or he can have a really great first round. We've seen both. And, I just think he's going to be able to be a little smarter than Daniel Marcos. Have a little bit better of a strategy. And I think if he has to, Davey Grant can catch him with something big, even if he is down. So, plus 120, I'm going to go with Davey Grant. First fight on the main card at 145 pounds, men's featherweight, Lerone Murphy taking on Josh Culibao. Should be high octane. Lerone Murphy took on Gabriel Santos' last fight. In the first round, he gets doubled off a leg kick, but he's able to stuff the headlock attempt, and he's able to get on top, and he's able to defend the armbar, but then he kind of backs out, doesn't want any of that on the ground. Then he eats a body kick, but then he's able to follow up with some step-in crosses, followed up by some jabs, but then he kind of walks right into a cross. Then in the second round, he lands a step-in cross, rips the body, gets a clinch, and then a body lock and drags him down to the mat. But then he eats a head kick standing at range, but then he lands a 1-2 whenever he gets pressed in the pocket, but then he gets dropped with a leg kick. Then he gets taken out with a single, and then he kind of gives up his back toward the end. Then in the third round, he lands a step-in hook, but then he gets taken out the single off the fence. He's able to get back to his feet relatively quickly, and he lands some left crosses in the pocket, but then he's able to slip the shot, and then he lands a right cross, but then he gets doubled off the fence, but he gets right back up again and doesn't want to end the fight on the ground. Relatively close fight, and he didn't give up didn't stay on the bottom, so. And then Josh Culibao took on Melsik Bagdasaryan in his last fight. In the first round, he lands some leg kicks at range, but then he eats a body kick, and then he eats a 3-2 combo off of a step-in leg kick. Kind of has his head exposed. Then in the second round, he gets pressed backwards, eats some body kicks. Then he's able to land a jab off of a leg kick. Then he takes his back whenever he jabs him, catches a kick, and he falls down and jumps on his back. Gets a rear naked choke submission out of nowhere. I thought it was competitive, but I thought he was losing the striking battle. He wasn't landing too many shots, and not got lucky, but had a giant opportunity and took it. So good for him. Josh Culibao plus 120, Lerone Murphy minus 140. I'm gonna go with Lerone Murphy. I think he's more of a complete fighter, and I think on the feet, Murphy's going to be able to outstrike him. Now, Lerone Murphy's takedown defense is decent enough. Josh Culibao might be able to catch a submission, but, the line's pretty close. I'm just going to back the better fighter. I'm going to go with Lerone Murphy. I think he'll have more activity, and he'll touch him more times, but we'll see. Second fight on the card at 155 pounds, men's lightweight, Jai Herbert taking on FILHO. ZIAM should be fun. Jai Herbert took on Kyle Nelson in his last fight. In the first round, he gets singled to the fence and clinched, but then he's able to reverse the clinch on the fence. But then he eats some body kicks standing at range. Then in the second round, he lands a jab, counter off of an overhand, and then he's able to land a counter body kick. He gets clinched to the fence, but he's able to keep that overhook, lands a couple knees in there, then breaks off, lands a 1-2, goes to the clinch. Then in the third round, he eats a leg kick, and he's able to stuff the double attempt. And he steps over, and he's able to get half guard, stays there for the rest of the fight. Not the most entertaining fight, but he got the job done, coming off a knockout. And then ZIAM took on Michael Figlak his last fight. In the first round, he slides out of range of the leg kicks, and he's able to land a left hook, follows up with a leg kick. He gets a body lock lift, but he's not able to hold him down very long. But then he gets a body shot whenever he's circling on the fence, and he's able to get a clinch off of the back fist, and he's able to get double overs, and he's able to stuff the trip attempt, and then he's able to get top, kind of steps over, kind of pancakes him. And then in the second round, he rips the body, and then he lands an overhand right, and then he throws the left hook, but then he eats a hook in return. Left hook's a little too short. Then he's able to complete the double off the fence, and then he rocks him with the back fist from the clinch position. He's able to stuff the takedown attempt and then get on top from there. So he's got good defense, and he capitalizes on it. He's able to take the ground. And in the third round, he hurts him with the leg kick, but he's able to stuff the single leg attempt with the whizzer, and then he's able to get a high crotch lift. He's not able to hold him, but then he's able to shoot a low single. That is a bit of a mistake because he gives up his back, and then he gives up mount, but then he's able to grab his leg and reverse the position. So, yeah, he can scramble. Might make a mistake, but he scrambles through it. FILHO ZIAM, minus 170. Jai Herbert, plus 145. Kind of a close fight. I kind of like Jai Herbert. Plus 145. You know, I could see FILHO ZIAM winning, but for the price tag, I think you got to go Jai Herbert here. I think it's going to be a competitive fight, and you know, maybe Jai Herbert doesn't have as much activity, but FILHO ZIAM, I don't think he's going to be able to take Jai Herbert down, and you know, I think Jai Herbert might be able to reverse the position, but it's more of anything minus 170. You know, FILHO ZIAM might get a little carried away. Jai Herbert might be able to capitalize off a spinning back fist or something like that. And yeah, hopefully, and we got to count on a little bit that Jai Herbert is going to have more activity than his last fight. That's part of it. But plus 145, I think I'm just going to back Jai Herbert on this one. Okay. Third fight on the main card at 185 pounds, men's middleweight. Paul the Bear Jew Craig making his 185 debut, taking on Andre Muniz. Muniz coming off the loss to Brendan Allen. Paul Craig coming down from 205, so it should be interesting. In his last fight against Johnny Walker, he got knocked out with some elbows off the single. Don't gotta talk about that. But before that, he took on Volkan Ozdemir at 205. And the first round, his double attempt gets stuffed, but he pulls guard, and he tries to go for the heel hook. Can't really get it. Then he pulls guard, overhooks the arms on the ground, and then he grabs a leg, but then he eats some ground and pound. Then he gets dropped with the hook on the fence, but also, like, when he gets hit, he just kind of pulls guard either way, but it looks bad to the judges either way, even if he's not really dropped. But then he lands the lead uppercut and a head kick on the feet. Then in the second round, he starts having a little bit of success on the feet, actually. He lands a double jab straight right. But then he chases with some hooks and lands a head kick. But then he shoots the double leg, and he gets pancaked because he does not drive all the way through. And it seems like he's happy pulling guard, so I don't understand that. Then he pulls him on top in a mount, and then he eats some elbows. Then he gets pressed back. But he's able to land an uppercut and some hooks on the fence. And then in the third round, he gets rocked with the hook in the clinch. But then he eats some ground and pound right into half guard. Does that thing where he pulls guard again. Then he lands a counter cross at range. But, you know, whenever he's pulling guard, Volkan Ozdemir is doing the damage. He had some success in the second round, but his game plan was not working. And he doesn't have a plan B. He just keeps pulling guard, and it doesn't look good. Then Andre Muniz, he took on Brendan Allen his last fight. In the first round, he lands a step-in overhand at range. Then he gets rocked with a right cross and a 1-2. But then he lands a right-left, right hook combination, and then he's able to follow it up with the lead right hook. But then he blitzes, shoots a single, but he gets stuffed. Brendan Allen did a good job in this fight, stuffing the takedowns. Then in the second round, he lands a left and then a right overhand, followed up by a head kick. But then he lands a step-in overhand, but he eats a jab, and he throws his hook in an uppercut, and then he's able to get the body lock, drags him down, but then he gets elevated and reversed, and Brendan Allen keeps his hips rolling, keeps the momentum going and gets reversed. So it was tough for him. Then in the third round, he lands a step in 1-2, and then he lands some counter right hooks. Then he lands a counter straight left, and then he eats an overhand and a straight to the head and the body. Then he's able to land a counter hook when Brendan Allen kind of oversteps a little bit. Muniz is waiting for him. Then he lands an uppercut and an overhand and a body kick, but his body kick gets caught and he gets taken down with the single leg, and he gives up his back, gives up the figure four position, gets rear naked choked and submitted. So, tough one, man. Because, you know, before that, Andre Muniz, pretty good on the ground, pretty good takedowns, but, you know. Andre Muniz is minus 225, Paul Craig plus 190. Now, that line's a little wide, but I just don't like Paul Craig going down to 185. Andre Muniz has power in his hands. People think he's a grappler, but Andre Muniz has power. He can crack people, especially if you're dropping down a whole weight class. And 205 to 185, that's 20 pounds. So, I don't know. But, yeah, I'm going to go with Andre Muniz. I think Paul Craig, he doesn't have a ton of offense. He might blitz or something, but anytime something happens, like he'll shoot. I think Andre Muniz is going to be able to defend his takedowns. Paul Craig will pull guard. Andre Muniz is a great grappler himself. He's not going to fall for that. He's not going to get caught in submission. You know, Brendan Allen didn't catch him in submission from the bottom. He took him down. So, you know, Paul Craig's offensive wrestling is bad. I'm going to go with Andre Muniz on this one. It's a little wide, but, you know, 205 going down to 185, it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, if Paul Craig wins, you can't really be surprised, but I don't know. Andre Muniz by decision plus 330. Could be, because Volkan Ozdemir has got massive power, and that was a decision, so might be something to think about. But I'm going to go with Andre Muniz on this one. Featured fight of the night at 145 pounds, men's featherweight. My most anticipated matchup, Nathaniel Wood taking on Andre Touchy Fili. Important matchup for either guy. Nathaniel Wood 2-0 at 145. Andre Fili was a guy around the top 15, trying to make his way back, coming off a win. Should be interesting. Both guys like to get in there and scrap, so I'm excited. Nathaniel Wood took on Charles Jourdain his last fight. In the first round, he lands a left hook in the pocket, gets a nice little outside trip, but then eats some straights and a knee to the head. Kind of when they're in the pocket, Charles Jourdain just kind of keeps pressing him, but then he rocks him with the right hook off of the front kick. And then the second round, he presses forward, keeps the high guard. He's able to catch the kick, get a takedown. But then he lands a counter right cross in the pocket. But then he eats a couple body shots. Then he gets a foot sweep and a clinch. Like no effort. Very nice. Then he lands a left hook to the forehead. Whenever they're forehead to forehead, like that's what Charles Jourdain wanted to do. So, but yeah, he got the better of those shots. Then in the third round, he gets a collar tie, gets another foot sweep. Then he's able to take his back. Then he keeps the clinch up against the fence. Then he gets a collar tie, and then he kind of backs out, and then he lands a 1-2, and then he'll go back in. So, yeah, pretty good stuff at range. And then Andre Fili took on Bill Algeo his last fight. In the first round, he lands a step-in right cross, but then he gets pressed with the 1-2 and some leg kicks, but then he walks into a couple leg kicks. Then he's able to land a nice head kick at range, kind of hooks it behind the head. Then he gets pressed with the 1-2, but he's able to get the clinch, stops any damage. Then the second round, he walks in and it lands a jab and a 1-2. Then he's able to fire back with a cross whenever he exits, but he kind of walks into some strikes at times. It's not going to be good against Nathaniel Wood. But then he lands some body kicks at range, and then he eats a couple jabs at range. But he's able to land a straight left off of Bill's front kick. Then in the third round, he gets clipped with a couple jabs, but he's able to land a check left hook, and then he shoots a blast double, goes to the arm triangle, transitions, takes the back, figure four, rear naked choke attempt. Can't really get it, but it was close at one point. And then Bill lands a bunch of punches over his shoulder, but you know, I don't think that makes somebody win a round. So there's some controversy there, but he was able to keep the figure four for like 2 minutes. So yeah, pretty good performance from him, and he has that wrestling and that grappling when he needs it. And Andre Fili plus 175, Nathaniel Wood minus 205. I just think Nathaniel Wood's a better fighter. I think he's faster. I think he's going to be able to get on the inside. He'll be able to get in and out. And Nathaniel Wood's got some decent foot sweeps. I don't think Andre Fili is going to be able to take him down. I think Nathaniel Wood knows that's a possibility. And, you know, if they get in the pocket, I'm going to pick Nathaniel Wood. And Andre Fili, unfortunately, is a little bit chinny. We've seen him get knocked out a couple times. So, price is a little wide, but I think this is Nathaniel Wood's showcase. I'm going to go with Nathaniel Wood. Co-main event of the evening at 125 pounds, women's flyweight, Molly Meatball McCann makes her return, taking on Julia Stoliarenko. Molly, she got dominated by Erin Blanchfield, so I'm not going to count that one. But before that, she took on Hannah Goldie last year. In the first round, she lands a step in right across that range. But then she gets doubled and clinched to the fence, but he's able to get out of that position. Then she lands a leg kick, and she's able to defend the single. Then she's able to land a hook off of that. She lands a step in jab, catches the kick, pushes her down, and then she rocks her with the step in overhand when Hannah's kind of circling toward the fence. And then she lands a right hook, and then just flurry of hooks and drops her to the ground. Keeps punching her, TKO. Nice stuff there. She still got power, and she could land it at any time. Julia Stoliarenko, she took on a couple people, but I'm going to look at the Alexis Davis fight because that makes sense. In the first round, she gets taken down off of a kick. She has a decent armbar attempt. Can't get it, though. Then in the second round, she eats a right hook. Whenever she throws her looping hook, it's countered. She kind of loops hooks whenever she gets pressed in the pocket, but then she eats a leg kick on the exit. And then she's able to land a right cross, followed up with a left hook when they go in the pocket again. And then she throws a jab and a head kick, but then she gets clipped with some hooks in the pocket. And then in the third round, she just gets dropped with a leg kick. Then she eats some ground and pound from full guard. So, yeah, did not have a good third round. Julia Stoliarenko, plus 180. Molly McCann, minus 210. I don't like betting women's favorites, but I just don't see any reason Julia Stoliarenko would win. She just kind of loops all of her punches, and she just kind of walks right into people. I think Molly's going to have some power for her. Julia Stoliarenko, she's a threat off of her back. I don't think she's going to take Molly down. Molly has decent takedown defense if it's not Erin Blanchfield. Price is a little high, but I'm going to go with Molly McCann. I think she could probably get her out of there. But if you want to throw some money on Julia Stoliarenko, I don't blame you. I just don't really see any reason to. I'm going to go with Molly McCann on this one. Think she gets it done in her hometown. Main event of the evening at 265 pounds, men's heavyweight. Tom Aspinall, ranked number 5, taking on Marcin Tybura, ranked number 10. A return fight for Tom Aspinall. He broke his leg exactly 1 year ago. Marcin Tybura is a solid test for his first fight back. It's going to let us know where he's at. If he can run through Marcin Tybura, it's off to the races. He's probably going to fight a top 5 guy. And if Marcin Tybura can pull the upset on Tom Aspinall in London, then Marcin Tybura might be off to the races. So it's a little more compelling than it sounds. I'm excited for it. I'm excited to see what Tom Aspinall can do, and I'm excited at the prospect of a massive upset. So either way, it'll be entertaining. Tom Aspinall took on Alexander Volkov his last fight before the Cursed Blades incident. In the first round, he lands a 1-2-3 combo, then he kind of backs out of range. He gets a body lock trip off of a hook, and then he lands some elbows in there, tries to go for the Kimura, and then gets back up to his feet, and then he's able to get a blast double whenever Volkov steps in a little too far for a straight right. Powerful blast double right in the half guard, and then he just gets a straight arm lock, gets a submission. So, yeah, you don't see straight arm locks too often, but, you know, at heavyweight, I guess it doesn't really take too much, so. And Tom's very strong. Then Marcin Tybura, he took on Blagoy Ivanov his last fight. In the first round, he kind of circles on the outside, but he eats a 1-2 off of his cross. Then he kind of skirts along the fence. Then he eats some overhands off of a hook to the body, but then he dips in and he throws an overhand at range. And he's able to land it, but, you know, got to watch tip your head sometimes. But then in the second round, he eats some jabs and an overhand and an uppercut and a right hook whenever he's coming in. So maybe not the best defense at all times. Then he lands a body kick, but then he eats a 1-2 off of it. But then he presses with some 1-2s whenever Blagoy's throwing his hooks. Then in the third round, right away, body lock to the fence, hits a pass-by shrug, takes his back, gets one hook in. And then eventually he's able to get both hooks in and grabs that cross wrist. Doesn't do a ton of damage, but keeps him down for the entire round. So that's impressive. That's an impressive tool when you need it. Marcin Tybura. Let's see. The line's not too bad on this one. Marcin Tybura is plus 380. Tom Aspinall minus 475. Actually, it's a little high considering Tom Aspinall is coming off an injury. But I don't remember the last time somebody comes in off an injury and that injury happens again. And Marcin Tybura, he's not like a power puncher. He's not going to be able to take Tom Aspinall down. And he has decent cardio for 3 rounds. Can he go 5 rounds? But we've never seen Tom Aspinall go 5 rounds. And Marcin Tybura is pretty solid at extending fights. But I just don't see how Marcin Tybura threatens Tom Aspinall here. Minus 475 is a little crazy. But you want to go the whole fight over 1.5 rounds plus 140 might make some sense. Maybe Tom Aspinall takes it a little slow, and it's heavyweight after all. But I just don't want to bet Marcin Tybura. If you put money on him, I don't blame you. But minus 475, I think it's one of those fights you got to lay the chalk on. I think Tom Aspinall might be able to take him down like right away. And he's not going to gas himself out like Alexander Romanov did. I think he's better everywhere pretty much, and he's faster, so more explosive. I'm going to Tom Aspinall, and we'll see what happens. Should be fun. All right, everybody, thanks for vibing with me. I appreciate it. Like, share, subscribe, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, all that stuff. Leave a comment down below. I'm always open to advice. Let's see some upsets. Let's see some violence. And let's see some profits. Good luck, everyone.